Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today. Go now to worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address and phone number there if you'd rather give by phone or mail. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you.
Well, it's across the United States right now, from Florida to Texas and Republican states all over the country. We're seeing efforts to formally reject Sharia law as being compatible with America, as being something that could be implemented. We've got lawmakers introducing so-called Sharia-free initiatives. We've got voters voting against Sharia law, arguing basically that the Constitution needs to be the highest authority, not this Islamic legal system. Welcome to Behind the Deep State. I'm your host, Alex Newman. It's wonderful to be with you today. We have a very special guest joining us, and she's an expert in this field. We'll get to Annie in a moment. But supporters of these efforts to ban Sharia in our states or even in our nation say that this is basically an effort to clarify the supremacy of our Constitution. But obviously, we've seen a lot of backlash. We've seen the leftists and the communists and the media and, of course, the Islamic civil rights groups like CARE shrieking, saying it's Islamophobic. It's a threat to religious liberty. Well, there's a lot to discuss with this whole issue, but what I really want to focus on today is, why is the deep state so interested in Islam? You know, America really didn't have an Islamic issue until recent decades, when our politicians deliberately imported millions of Muslims into this country. Why did they do that? Why did globalists and communists and liberals and even neoconservatives decide that America needed more Muslims? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I've got my theories. We see in Western Europe this very bizarre alliance between radical Muslims and radical leftists, the so-called red-green alliance. That's very interesting. And, you know, if I didn't know better, I'd almost say that a lot of these bombing campaigns in Islamic nations, followed by immediate invitations to come to Sweden or France or Germany or Canada or the United States, I'd say there might be a method to the madness here. So, there's a lot to discuss, and I can't think of anybody better to join us for this discussion than Annie Cyrus. She was actually born in Iran. She's got a fascinating personal story, and she just wrote a new book called The Architecture of Jihad, looking at some of these very questions, and of course, looking at the broader Islamic movement around the world, the financial networks, the policy, the institutional frameworks that are involved here. Annie, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
Well, I got to start with the obvious, Annie. Give us your personal story. I mean, you were born in Iran. You lived under Islamic law. Obviously, you're no fan. What's wrong with Sharia before we even get into, you know, what's the deep state interest? Why wouldn't Americans want Sharia in our country?
That is very accurate. I am not a fan of. I'm actually opposed to Islamic law, also called Sharia. And yes, I was born and raised in Iran. I spent the first 15 years of my life under strict Sharia, because Iran was under Islam and the constitution of the country to this day is still drawn from Sharia. And with that being said, brief recall of my childhood from birth to age 15. I was declared an adult woman at age 9. I became an adult. With that, I was responsible for my actions and faced consequences. Some of my actions were singing publicly, having nail polish on, accidentally letting my hair showing from my hijab, going to a party when boys and girls were dancing, talking, eating, And all of those actions resulted in me being arrested. And I mean, literally put in handcuffs, taken to detention center, taken to court, facing consequences.
How old were you when that happened, Annie?
So I was 9 when I became an adult woman. My first arrest was when I was 10. And from there, it was just repeatedly I was arrested. Age 11 was the worst because I had 3 arrests that resulted in not just arrest, detention center, and punishment jail time. It's 48 hours to 72 hours. But I also started being lashed, different numbers, different time. The biggest one was 25 lashes in one event. And then 12, 13, pretty much repeatedly I was arrested and I kept facing consequences.
And I understand you were married off at a young age, and eventually you escaped from that. Tell us about that.
At age 13, I was, I don't like using it, but we'll use it. I was married off by my father's approval to a man who was willing to pay the proper price that my father set for me. And then when I was 15, my grandmother arranged for smugglers to smuggle me out of Iran into Turkey.
Wow. And then from Turkey, you went to the U.S. Embassy and eventually ended up here, huh?
Believe it or not, I actually went to UN first. Yes. There was a time when UN really did UN work. I went through UN, got my asylum. Then I chose US as my final destination, went to 2 different interviews at the embassy, did my medical check, and came to America when I was 18.
Wow. Incredible story, Annie. Thanks for sharing that. So you have a new book out. It's very good. In fact, I wrote an endorsement for it. The Architecture of Jihad. Talk to us about the Architecture of Jihad. What are the jihadists up to? What's their plan for the world? Where does Iran fit in? And eventually I want to get into, how does the deep state fit in? Why are Western globalists and Western communists seemingly so friendly to so many of these apparently contradictory goals?
Of course. So let's start here. When you say jihadists, when I say jihadists, when we read the title of the book, The Architecture of Jihad, we are not talking only about those who scream Allahu Akbar and blow themselves up. That is the version that Western society has come to know about jihad. When we say jihad, we're talking about the very foundation Muhammad set for expansion of Islam to the goal, which is global caliphate, meaning the entire world, every breathing human will be a Muslim. That's jihad. Yes, by translation of Arabic word, it means a struggle. And it is a struggle because every single form of jihad that I mentioned in the book, which are 10 of them, it is a struggle. It's not an inner struggle by itself, but it is a struggle because you have to make hard decisions as a person. You need to decide to abandon your home. You have to decide to blow yourself up. You have to give up your money. You have to give up your family. You have to give up your traditions. So the end goal for jihad is to conquer the world. Does it always apply one way or another? No, there are times, there are circumstances, there are cases that applied 7 of the jihads at the same time. There are those that applied 3, but I can guarantee you every case will show you that at least 2 to 3 jihads were working hand in hand for the end result. The combat jihad that we know, the blowing up and killing people, it's never working on its own alone. It always has other forms of jihad building the momentum for the last minute we all know as September 11th.
So I guess this is part of Islamic theology. The Muslims believe that eventually the whole world will come under the dominion of this global Islamic state. But what I want to understand, what I think confuses a lot of people in the West, and we struggle to understand this, is why then do leftists and globalists and people in authority and parliaments and Congress, why are they encouraging this? Why would they want to import a bunch of people who believed this stuff? I mean, I don't think the communists want to see a world ruled by Sharia law. I don't think the globalists want to see a world under the dominion of Allah and his prophet Muhammad. So why are they doing this? What's the explanation for that, Annie?
So I agree with you. No, they don't want a world under Sharia. However, two factors here of why they do what they do. One, the biggest one is the common goal. I'm going to refer to them as the black. I know most of your audience are familiar with red-green axis, but I'm going to step it up and say black-green axis. So we're going to go to everything that we would call evil that uses green of Islam, because the common goal is destruction, chaos, and one world order. The second reason is, as of right now, for last 1400 years, historically proven, which I use some of it in my book, Islam has found a way to use a very key word to counter any criticism, and that is religion. Now, what they lack to understand is they can't win the end battle with Islam. They enable it, they empower it, they encourage it, thinking one day the final battle is between them and Islam, and they will win it. What they lack to understand is all they need to do is read history. Every time there was an alliance between black and green, at the end battle, green won. Example, Iran. The origination of what we call the 1979 revolution, it started with the Marxist Iranian groups tied to Soviet Union. Islam came and started helping. They enabled Islam. When Islam won in 1979, the first badge of order of execution by the supreme leader was 800 members of the Marxist group to be executed in one day. And it happened. Iran ended up being Islamic, not Marxist.
And so you think that the Marxists in the West think that it'll end differently this time? That they're going to use the Muslims as a battering ram to take down the West and then defeat the Muslims and rule over the ashes?
They do. They think that for the fact that, again, Middle East and the region, I would say Central Asia generally, has been extremely misunderstood by Western powers. They always think something about us is different. One of the banners I use to promote the book is actually what makes you think you're different. Because that's the problem. Not just the Marxists, not just the communists, not just the deepest state. Even average Americans think we're different here in America. We'll never be conquered by Islam. The question is why? Yes, we're modern. Yes, we are very advanced when it comes to culture, understanding, technology, policy. But that's actually the problem. We changed. They didn't. When their method didn't change and successfully drive this goal 1400 years, that's when you need to actually get deep and understand their history to understand their actions today.
So, Annie, depending on whose numbers you look at, there's several million Muslims in America. Maybe there's more. I don't know. But, at best, it makes up a few percentage of the population. Yes, they've got a lot of organizations and institutions. They're doing a lot behind the scenes. They've gotten a lot of influence in government at all levels, even in the Republican Party. But do you really think it's realistic that a small minority like that would be able to cause this kind of damage that you're talking about to a society as big and powerful as the United States?
Absolutely. Yes, it is possible. But it depends. Do we have enough Americans? Furthermore, do we have enough Christians who are willing to learn, understand, and then defend America against this? Or are we going to carry on as not all Muslims, which is accurate, by the way, not all Muslims do this? Are we going to continue with let's coexist, let's look the other way? It's not going to happen here. It is doable and possible. Again, historically, it has happened. When you can conquer a land with over 2,800 years of history, I'm referring to Iran, it's not that hard to conquer America, which is a baby in comparison. It's just a matter of time, a matter of reaction and learning from history. Just like right now, we have 18 cities that I have reported myself with documentation. 18 cities in America are 100% conquered by Sharia.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And we have more
Dearborn,
coming.
Hamtramck, Patterson, New Jersey. There's a few that I can think of. They've even got like Arabic on their police badges. They've renamed Main Street Palestine Way. I mean, this is real. It's not figment of anyone's imagination. This is happening.
Oh,
right
I
now
got a
in
very
America.
good one. The city name is Islamville, New York.
What? There's an
Yes.
Islamville in New York.
Yes.
Oh, yikes! Wow.
That is my number one on the 18 report. If you don't mind me saying this, people can find that on my Substack. It's called The Conquer Map of America.
Wow.
The number one city is called Islamville.
Wow.
And yes, we are conquered. The question is, are we going to let them finish it or not?
And of course, we have a Muslim mayor in New York City now. Other than Washington D.C., maybe the most powerful city in America. Something that even I think just a few years ago would have been seen as utterly ridiculous. So where do we go from here? And let's start with where do the Muslims go from here? Like, I mean, are they working together? Is it just they all read the same holy book, so they all kind of know what to do, or are they being coordinated behind the scenes? And where do they fit in with the Democrat Party? Where do they fit in with the Republican Party? I mean, I understand Governor Abbott in Texas, who's been speaking very vociferously against Islam and Islamization and taking on this little Muslim town they wanted to build, Epic or whatever. But I understand one of his biggest donors is actually a Muslim. So what are the Muslims doing here? What's their next step? Where do they go from here if they're going to keep advancing?
I'm glad you started your question with, do they all read the same holy book? That's the problem, actually. If all Muslims would pick up a Quran and read it, I promise you the number of Muslims across the world would drop by 60%. That's a problem. They don't.
Why do you say
the
that,
Quran.
Annie? I have to ask.
Well, it's not encouraged. Like in a Muslim community or society, it's not encouraged for you to do Quran study or read the Quran by yourself. Even an average Muslim is not considered smart enough to understand Quran. So they're encouraged to go to the mosque and listen to their imam. And what the imam is teaching is not the entire book. It's a selective series of chapters that are to be taught and studied. But if they would, just as a human, if they would pick up the Quran and let's say read chapter 9 of the Quran or chapter 4 or chapter 5 of the Quran, they would be like, wait, no, really? So you're not going to let me go to heaven unless I commit jihad with my money or my life? No, I don't want to be part of this. Or on chapter 4, they would be like, wait, so you're telling me I have to treat my mother, my sister, my daughter, my wife as a property? But they don't read it. And they're not being taught at a school or at the mosque until the time is right. And I want to be very fair here. I personally know Muslims who walked away from Islam when it was time and they were being trained to become a jihadist of any form.
That's a capital offense, if I'm not mistaken. Apostasy is punishable by death under Islamic law, if I'm not mistaken.
You're very correct. Not just it's punishable by death, but it's also the only time that Sharia gives a free pass to Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians. If a Christian, Jew, or a Zoroastrian kills an ex-Muslim, they will walk free. The only circumstances that's the thing. Leaving Islam is the greatest sin under Islam.
Wow.
But people do it. Those who have learned, and that's the thing. I actually sent a copy of my book to few friends who had Muslim friends. I said, invite them to read this book. Because I know I wrote it in the most unbiased way. There is not a line of my story in there. I didn't involve my experience with it. I used their own text, their own history to write this book. And I'm like, I'm hoping some of the Muslims in America are going to read this and at least start looking into what they chose to follow.
Well, yeah, that'd be good. Just in the interest of full disclosure and informed consent, you ought to read your holy book that you're following. We Christians, we like to study our Bibles. It's never a bad idea. Annie, we're down to just about 10 minutes left. What do you think Americans should be doing about this? And is it too late? I mean, we've got whole congressional districts now dominated by Muslims. We've got New York under a Muslim mayor. We've got, as you pointed out, Muslim cities and towns all across this country. Through chain migration, the numbers are obviously only going to increase. Obviously, they've got much higher birth rates than the native population here. Is it too late? And if not, what is the solution? How should Americans, how should people across the Western world be dealing with this now that we have invited many, many millions, tens of millions of Muslims into the Western world?
It's not too late at all. If you ask me, it's never too late, especially in America. But I will start with plugging myself. Pick up a copy of my book, not because I wrote it, but because it is by far the only book you'll find that not only gives you the problem, but it will also give you a solution to the problem I'm mentioning in the book. Every chapter closes with practical countermeasures, very simple steps everybody can take to maybe not necessarily fully stop what's happening, but to slow it down long enough for our government to figure out how to do this Sharia-free caucus, which is a topic of its own for another day. When you know what you're dealing with, you can separate labels. So you can start in discussions about aspects of jihad that are applying to your life every day without being called Islamophobe, because you have the knowledge to counter that label if you care to counter it. Because someone like me, that's all right. I'm labeled Islamophobe by everybody, and I'm okay with that. Why? Because labels does not matter. What matters to me is to never have to live under the circumstances I grew up with. I can never be that person again. Knowing what I know today, yes, huge part of it thanks to America, but the biggest umbrella of now knowing that my Father in heaven has created me in his image, I can never go back to being a half a person as a property to be ordered what to do and what my worth is by a male guardian. But not everybody had that experience. So think about this. The Islamic Revolution in Iran took place in 1979. I was born in 1983. I wasn't even there to fight it, but I paid the price for it. So actions, get educated. When you are educated, don't be afraid to speak the truth. Go to your churches, go to your police department, go to your legislature, show them the proof and say, listen, this part of this Sharia that is being practiced in America goes against our Constitution. You're going to have to stop it, or I'm going to have to replace you comes next round of elections. Furthermore, get involved with your local area. Get involved with your local mosque. Don't be afraid. Walk in there, ask questions. Be respectful, but walk in there and ask questions. When you don't get answers, then go to your local FBI and make a report. And be very careful of your schools. Attend your meetings. You have no idea how many schools are sneaking in halal food for all the students, which you're paying for, and with that, you're funding jihad against yourself. You have no idea how many schools are teaching your kids about this wonderful, perfect man known as Prophet Muhammad. So at the end of the day, it's take action, but you can't take proper action unless you have the knowledge to do the right steps.
Yeah, and getting educated and informed is always a good idea, especially something like this. And of all the different plots and schemes and strategies of the deep state, how important is Islam in this scheme? I mean, we see there's dozens of Islamic governments within the UN that seem to always be in favor of more power for the UN, the climate scam, all the stuff. The Islamic governments all seem to be like fully on board with this program. But obviously, there's a lot of other strategies and things that they're pursuing as well. But how critical is Islam to this broader effort?
I would say it is their second most powerful tool.
What's the first? I got to know.
The first one is their belief. Their commitment to the cause is their first powerful tool. But the second most powerful is Islam. And let's look at it this way, Alex. When you think about all of the Islamic countries you just mentioned, giving more power, requesting more power for UN, they're all top 10 wealthiest countries as well. That's what we struggle with. A lot of Islamic countries are very wealthy. And that's why I always go back to you want to see change? Cut all ties with Islamic countries. Stop doing business with them.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it was a deliberate policy of the Western establishment to enrich these Islamic dictatorships. We've got oil coming out our ears in this country. It's all over Alaska. They've classified a lot of that as national security, state secrets. We've got plenty of energy. There was no need for America to go enrich these Arab Islamic dictatorships by basically building out their oil infrastructure and then making the American economy permanently dependent on these energy resources. That was a deliberate policy decision. And when you put it in light of what we're talking about, that policy decision makes a whole lot more sense. And of course, then they route that money into all kinds of different programs that always coincidentally seem to advance the New World Order agenda. And it's so interesting with the climate nonsense too. You know, they're always whining about carbon emissions and oil and all that, but it never seems to be directed at the Islamic governments. It's always America and Canada and Norway that need to shut down their energy production, not Saudi Arabia or Qatar or whatever. Truly amazing. Annie, we're down to very little time left. I know there are some people who are going to be offended that we did this episode and, oh, you're just attacking a vulnerable minority. How do you address those concerns? I mean, how should people relate to Muslims? You know, like for me as a Christian, you know, even if they hate me, I love them. Even if they hate me, I'm going to pray for them and whatever. And I want them to know the truth. But how do we deal with that these attacks, that if you expose the kinds of things we're talking about, that you're somehow mean-spirited or picking on a vulnerable minority group or something like this?
I would address it personally, me. My organization, Live Up to Freedom, has done real life, human life rescues of 21 individuals, every single one of them Muslim. I got nothing against Muslims at all. But if I watch America or any other country making it legal for every household to be allowed to have a box with bombs and grenades in them, I'll be concerned. I'm pretty sure not every American is going to use it, but the fact that we're allowing them to have it makes me nervous. Now imagine that box. That is Islam. People can choose what the Constitution protects our beliefs, not our actions, Alex. It's not my fault if their beliefs comes with mandatory actions that are harmful to other people. We have to address the toolbox.
And Annie, what about all these Muslims who say, no, Islam is a religion of peace. I wouldn't in a million years dream of blowing something up. Are they misunderstanding their scriptures? Where's the disconnect there?
The disconnect is what we just talked about earlier. I'll suggest to those Muslims to pick up the Quran and a copy of Life of Muhammad, Sirah, and read it. They change their mind about the peace part of Islam.
Yeah. Annie, where do people get your book, The Architecture of Jihad? Is Amazon the best place?
Amazon is the best place. However, if you like to get a signed copy, then you have to go to my website. And unfortunately, right now, I can only ship to United States of America. So liveuptofreedom.com. You can get a signed copy inside US. Otherwise, go to Amazon, and the paperback and Kindle versions are available. And if you do have Kindle Unlimited, you can read the book for free in your Kindle Unlimited account.
Excellent. Annie, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for writing this book, and thanks for sounding the alarm. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything you do, Alex.
Thanks, Annie.
Life is too short to spend a single moment spinning in laundry worries. Take a load off your mind with the all-new Norwex Powerzyme laundry detergent. This natural detergent harnesses the power of enzymes and plant-based surfactants to leave fabrics fresh and clean without fillers, brighteners, synthetic fragrances, bleach, or harsh chemicals. So go ahead, have your cake and eat it too. More than ever, stressful stains have met their match. Powerzyme's fast-acting enzymes break down organic substances while natural surfactants loosen locked-in dirt and oil, removing residue, stains, and odors with ease. With 91% bio-based ingredients, this dermatologist-tested hypoallergenic formula is suitable for sensitive skin types and delivers a safe and effective clean that won't harm you or the planet's waterways. Less time spent worrying about laundry means you can focus on what truly matters. Norwex Powerzyme Laundry Detergent. Discover the power of nature and load up on confidence.
And we're back with the author of Architecture of Jihad. Annie Cyrus is an American and an Iranian who has been advocating for human rights, calling out people that have been silent on this issue for a long time because she's a survivor of Sharia, and she is a survivor of being a child bride. Annie also is the founder of Live Up to Freedom, and she utilizes primary sources to expose what is driving Islam. Annie, it is so great to have you here on Patriot Radio today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Well, jihad is defined in the Reliance of the Traveler as warfare against non-Muslims. But warfare takes many forms, and I love how you laid this book out about the different forms of jihad and how many Americans particularly have really gone to sleep about this threat to the West. So if you could describe this and the message that you want to give to Americans to wake up.
Absolutely. So, yes, you're correct. In Reliance of the Traveler, jihad is described as waging war against non-believers. There are a few problems there because a lot of Americans actually think, or they have actually believed the lies by many imams out there that we are considered believers, so there's no danger toward ourselves. But if they would understand that when in Islamic text of any sort, from Quran, Hadith, Sirah, or Reliance of the Traveler, when they say non-believers, they're specifically talking about non-Muslims. You're either a believer as a Muslim or you're considered non-believer. So if we had that understanding, we would understand jihad applies to all of us. Now, furthermore, many Americans or Westerners, I would say, they think jihad is when you hear someone scream Allahu Akbar and something blows up. Yes, that's part of jihad. But the entire structure of jihad, which is the machine that drives Islam into its end goal, which is global caliphate, meaning every breathing human shall be a Muslim. That's the end goal. And Islam must rule globally as one world system. There are so many other aspects to it, which I did my very best to put all of it in one book, as you mentioned, The Architecture of Jihad. And some of them so far, from the feedback I'm receiving, has shocked people when they realize what they thought as just part of coexistence has been nothing but implementation of Sharia and Islam inside America. For example, missionary jihad has shocked a lot of people. When I explain in the book that when you say missionary to us Christians, it's preaching the gospel, planting the seed of the truth, talking about Jesus, and then leaving it to God to do the rest. That is not Islamic missionary. When you hear the word dua, which regularly in America, in many big cities, you see that happening in middle of the streets, that's not just invitation to Islam. That is the very first step of jihad. In Reliance of the Traveler, again, it says if you invite someone to enter Islam and they decline that invitation, your imam shall put a fatwa on their head to be considered an infidel, and they shall be killed, which takes us back to basic of Islam and Sharia. Sharia 101, convert or kill. Would you like me to continue, or do you want to?
Let's talk a little bit about this. Yeah, so China, there were two Chinese colonels that came out with a book called Unrestricted Warfare, and it talked about how every aspect of our lives was a battleground, that the Chinese looked at everything from manufacturing to economy to immigration. Everything was a battlefield. And what really stood out to me was that Islam also has a similar approach, that everything, every aspect of our lives is a battlefield, is a place to wage jihad in Dar el-Harb, so the world at war. So if that's the case, What are Americans missing about jihad here? You mentioned dawa already, and I love that. What are they missing here? Yes, let's continue and go through each form that I think Americans would be like, no way. I mean, halal foods is one that stands out to me. So let's start there.
Absolutely. If you would allow me before I start there, I want to go back to something you said before you brought me on before your break. And that was, I wonder why these leftist judges don't do their job, deliver justice.
Right.
The moment you say leftists, it reminded me of red-green axis, which is the Islamist, Marxist, and everything underneath Marxist, which is leftist. That's exactly why. They are not part of America. They're not honoring American values. They're part of destruction. They have aligned themselves with destruction, not building, not caring for American people. And that's where I'm going to connect that to your question of halal. Yes, halal certification, because halal food isn't the end of it. It's the beginning of it, but we have to address halal certification. Though, as I mentioned in the book, nowhere in the Quran does it say halal applies to anything except meat, just meat, not even your rice or water, just meat. But under Sharia, now we have things that are certified under halal certification, such as nail polish, which is forbidden to be used as a Muslim anyways. But somehow the left has activated a new modern look for Islam by telling them, why don't we start expanding you, where we will provide you, and again, these are all documented in the book, every halal certification company that is issuing these certifications, they got away with it, working with a leftist judge, a leftist legislator, a leftist mayor, a leftist somebody. Now we have halal certification. And a lot of people will say, well, we have kosher certification too. Yes, we do. Well, here are the differences. Number one, halal certification funds jihad, the one Americans are familiar with. It pays for jihadists to kill non-Muslims. Kosher certification doesn't. Also, halal certification is under the missionary category to be a nonprofit organization that is untouchable when it funds, let's say, Holy Land Foundation, one of the most known cases in America, thankfully, that had fundings coming through all of these nonprofit organizations. And then comes the mandate. I've never heard, maybe you have, correct me, I've been in America for 24 years. I've never heard of a public school to face mandate from Jews to feed everybody kosher meat because that's more convenient. But we do have the schools right now in Michigan and in Minnesota and in California that they have changed their entire menu for the kids to halal meat, which means every non-Muslim parent is also funding their own demise.
That is incredible. And the jizya, let's talk a little bit about that. Minnesota, you just mentioned, there's all this fraud going on in Minnesota where taxpayers have been ripped off and funding, and for America, it's just like, we can't believe that it's happening. But it looks like it is a form of that tax, that they believe that stealing from American taxpayers is what's owed them under Sharia. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I'm looking at this right now. And like you said, they have had to connect with the leftists to make this happen.
Absolutely, yes. Jizya, for your audience, just in case they need a quick note, most Americans, when they hear the word jizya, they say, well, I've been told it's Islamic tax. It is not. It's not. Islamic tax is zakat. Jizya is a protection tax for non-Muslims. Imagine areas where, gangs own them or mafia owns them. You know how the stores have to actually pay protection money to stay in business, to stay alive? That's what jizya is under Islam. If you are not a Muslim, and if you are qualified to be a second-class citizen, also known as a dhimmi, which only applies to Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrian, anything outside of that, you don't even get that status, then as a second-class citizen or dhimmi, an extra tax known as protection tax will apply to you. And that goes under financial jihad category, same with halal meat and halal certification. That is how they fund the survivor of caliphate in non-Islamic societies. And yes, you're correct. What is happening in Minnesota, which is now expanding to California, I'm ashamed to say my state of Ohio, it's exactly what they feel entitled to. Not just that, let's expand this fraud into very United States of America now has banking system known as Sharia banking. So Muslims get advantage when it comes to getting loans, getting credit cards, buying homes, buying cars, because they can go to that bank, just name one most famous, Bank of America, does provide Sharia financing. And Sharia financing means the Muslim person who just took out the loan to purchase anything will face 0 interest rate. And the interest rate they're not paying is added to mine and yours, which is also what they call jizya. We pay for their lifestyle.
That's exactly right. But when we come back from the break, we're going to talk more about the different forms of warfare that are being waged by Islam here in the United States of America. You're going to be shocked. Stay tuned. More with Annie Cyrus. LiveUpToFreedom.com.
Your financial advisor isn't going to tell you this. Your bank won't mention it. And your 401k custodian, they're hoping you never find out. You can convert your retirement account into physical gold and silver, real metal in your hands, or stored exactly where you decide. It's called a gold IRA rollover, and it's 100% legal, 100% IRS approved. And your financial, quote, experts, they don't get a commission when you take control like this. Wall Street wants your money in their system, in their accounts, where they control it. But physical gold, that's yours. Can't be hacked, can't be deleted, can't vanish when the market crashes. Verity Metals, we're the experts they don't want you to call. Convert your IRA or 401k into gold and silver that you can actually hold. Visit veritymetals.com, because your retirement should be in your hands, not theirs.
And we're back with more from Annie Cyrus, LiveUpToFreedom.com. So you talk about some other forms of warfare, including deception jihad and propaganda jihad. What are those?
Absolutely. Again, deception jihad, part of it, what I would say 1/5 of it is very known in America. A lot of Americans will immediately say taqiyya, where Muslims are allowed to lie. And that's very accurate. Taqiyya is part of deception. But it goes, again, beyond just one form of lying. It goes into 5 different forms, actually. We've been witnessing it, by the way, for a long time, but we recently just witnessed one of the forms that is my favorite, which is called hudna. Hudna is when militarily, Islamic military is allowed to make a peace treaty, temporary, that can never exceed 10 years, temporary peace treaty with a non-Muslim or kafir or infidel military. If they face defeat, they can buy time to regroup, reorganize, come back, and finish the job. This was practiced by Muhammad himself. Muhammad came up with it. This is not a modern day. And we just faced that with Iran war. Everybody was excited about this ceasefire, and I was one of the few voices as an Iranian American to say, no, they're not agreeing to our terms, they're buying time. And the reason hudna is too important for Americans to know is when it comes to Israel and Gaza, Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Iran, Israel and Houthis, every time somebody out there sits and spread the whole, well, they agreed to ceasefire, Israel is so evil, they broke ceasefire, I need to repeat hudna for them. I need to remind them this is a technique they have used for 1400 years to make the enemy look bad, make themselves the victim while they come back and repeat the same pattern. And they do that inside America. You go from a big military into an individual who goes on a shooting ramp, who goes blowing things up. Well, 6 of them who hijack our planes. And then when they go to court, they practice the other type of deception within hudna, which is kitman, where they tell you the half-truth of, yes, I screamed Allah Akbar, you're infidels, but nobody was behind me. I have no ties to anybody else. And unfortunately, our country has formed a habit of never looking deeper. How many lone wolves do you think there are?
Right?
None.
Right. And we talk about this quite a bit. There's no such thing as a lone wolf. It's ridiculous. But I don't think people understand that that's actually part of the deception process. So how else are they trying to deceive Americans?
Oh, Morono, properly pronounced, is my favorite. That's exactly what, again, documented in my book. The hijackers of September 11 used it. The brothers, the Boston Marathon bomber brothers used it, and many other. It's where they actually are allowed to publicly step on all laws and regulations by Sharia and become one of us. Its translation from its word is fit in. There are reports, records of the hijackers who actually went to bars and strip clubs with their American friends while they were working their plan up. There are reports of some of the witnesses saying, that guy, he had a girlfriend. We went to bars every night, got drunk. You are allowed to do that. You're allowed to become the nice, moderate Muslim neighbor until you're called to your duty of jihad.
So it allows them quite literally to be clandestine in their operations as part of a theopolitical construct, because this is not a religion. Right? So
it's not.
Well, yeah, let's. I want to hear your thought on that. It is not a religion. They even say that in textbooks like What Islam is All About, one of the foremost textbooks in Islamic schools here in America. How do you approach that topic when people say, well, it's just a religion, we have freedom of religion here in America?
My personal experience tells me that I used to be a cult member, because Islam is a cult. It covers every front of your life, and then it dictates the ending to your life. You don't have a choice. The ending must be in path of Allah. Otherwise, the description of what will happen to you in his hell is too terrifying to even challenge, let alone think about. It's a full cult. However, it's a cult that has survived for 1400 years because it does have 5 times a day praying and 1 month a year fasting. They have just found the very right label to hide. Tip of the iceberg is the religious part of it, and then it's the rest of it. And again, what kind of religion? My question for those who try to push back is, tell me, what kind of religion would ever call itself in one word description of submission? Explain that to me, because Islam means submission. The root of Islam doesn't come from salam. When you hear Arabs saying assalamu alaikum, they are telling you to peace be upon you. The root of the word peace is salam, not Islam, salam. Just because they sound familiar, you shouldn't believe them telling you Islam means peace. No, it means submission by the word definition.
And, Islam appeals to the base nature of humanity. I think that is why it was able, because he shifted, that's why he was able to break out of the Arabian Peninsula and begin attacks all across Europe and the known Western world. And so that brings us to the propaganda aspect of jihad. We see it all the time where there's one message for believers, Muslims, there's one message for everybody else. So talk a little bit about that. What are we facing here in the United States as far as a propaganda jihad?
Oh, that one is where their friends come to help dramatically, and I'm talking about the leftists. That's where left comes in, from platforms, being social media, to actors and actresses and singers, to movie makers and legislators. The best example I can give your audience that will quickly click is about 6-7 years ago, we witnessed a very uniform movement where every award in America, from Grammy Award to Emmy Award to Oscar, everything else, you had at least one of the presenters on the stage citing a verse from Quran that went as follows. The Quran says, if you kill a man, it's like you kill all mankind. And everyone was like, oh, so peaceful. And there was nobody to counter on the same message and say, wait, can we continue reading that quickly? Or can we start from the beginning of that verse? Because that verse says, "Oh, Bani Israel." If you kill a man, it's like you kill all men. "Oh, Bani Israel" means, "Oh, Jews," not Muslims. If Jew kill a man, it's like he killed all mankind. And then it follows as, "But as a believer, if you kill in revenge of someone who killed your loved one, then it's okay." The cherry picking by the Muslim leaders handed to the talking heads of the left is the biggest propaganda we're facing through also social media. When algorithm shadow bans my clip and boosts the clip of the American woman who have found peace in Islam, as is showing a video as she puts her hijab on, without mentioning that if I don't wear this hijab from now on, they have the right to kill me.
And that takes us to kind of the more disturbing aspect of jihad. There really is a sexual jihad going on. And I people really shy away from talking about this. But as a soldier in the Middle East, we saw it. Studying this since then, I've seen it. Not just child brides, but just the institutionalization of rape. Why is that being swept under the rug, particularly in Europe? And what would you have as a message to all the female Americans listening right now?
Well, the reason they're covering up for it, I would say it's the same reason they cover up for everything else when it comes to Islam. The mask that has been provided to them. Now, I'm not going to say everyone is part of the left movement. Some are doing it out of fear. Many people do it based on just lack of knowledge, exactly why this book came out. Because I realize people don't have the proper knowledge, most people. My message to not just American women, but Europeans as well, is that it doesn't have to be your pain until it knocks at your door. As a woman, we all have that at a certain age. We were 8 years old, we were 9 years old, we were 13, we were 15. Some of us at 13 became somebody's wife. Some of you were blessed not to be, but you didn't have to be that child bride. You can easily relate to the pain I had to face. So stop picking the comfort zone where you can look the other way and it's not my problem until it's my problem. And stop it from becoming your problem. Worse, as you know, Matt, the Islamic Revolution in Iran was finalized in 1979. I was born in December of 1983. I faced the consequences of those who didn't stop what happened in 79. So again, to all the mothers out there, the aunts, the grandmas, do you really want to wait until your next generations are turning into sexist slaves of Islamic societies? I mean, it's a choice, but I wouldn't recommend that choice.
So regarding Iran, a lot of propaganda about that. We've been at war with the mullahs in Iran since 1979. 444 days, hostages were taken. I mean, this is Hezbollah has attacked U.S. Marines and killed U.S. Marines. We fought against Iranian proxies inside Iraq while I was there. Some of them are actual Iranian agents. So I really have a hard time with people today who are saying, oh, we should just let it be, right? As if they're going to stay in Iran and leave us alone. They have not left us alone. They've been fomenting plans to attack us for 47 years. So what is your take on the current war in Iran? And also, how do you think that this is going to end? Will the Iranian people actually rise up?
So I have been against us leading the war. I have always said we should let Israel lead the war and we are the backup, either through equipment, weapons, or even if needed, technology. Not because I don't think this is not our war. I want to be very clear. Islamic Republic of Iran's mullahs are at war with everybody. So this is everybody's war for 47 years. The reason I preferred it that way is, of course, I'm a little biased. You know, I'm American. I would not want our American soldiers to be hurt or, you know, lose their life. Secondly, Israel has the understanding and decades of studying the country inside and knowing where things go. However, when we joined this war, I have prayed for President Trump, Pete Hegseth, everyone involved, our man and woman deployed. But how it's going to end, I don't. I would love to say I know how it ends, but I don't think this is going to be what we wished for. There will be more negotiations. There will be more ceasefires. This is going to drag on. And people of Iran are ready to come back. Because remember, before we go in, there was a full revolution going on. They're ready to come back out, but the situation isn't there yet. They don't have enough window to come back out between the bombs dropping, very unstable ceasefires going on. They are ready to come back out. Yes, I know that from talking to them, getting messages every day from inside Iran. They're ready, but they can't do that until they get a green light from Israel and US of, okay, 10 days, we're not coming in, no bombs are dropping, go. And also, where do they go? If they come on the streets and try to take the country, then there's a bigger danger because the Islamic Republic, or I should say IRGC, because Islamic Republic doesn't exist anymore. It's just IRGC now, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. IRGC can easily drop missiles and kill Iranians, blaming Israel or America. That's right. The secondary layer of danger. Iranians are aware, and they're not coming out because they know for a fact IRGC will kill them inside the streets and then just push propaganda that it was Israel. The same thing that happened with the first school, Minab school, that it turned into propaganda of, U.S. Dropped a bomb purposely on a school that was little girls. And, we all heard the story. By the way, your audience may not be familiar with me. I am not a cold-hearted person. I love my motherland with every cell in my body. I have fought for the freedom of Iran, just in hopes of one day I go back and just get a chance to say goodbye to my grandmother who passed away, almost 20 years ago. But I'm also very rational, and I'm very grateful to America for giving me a chance. So if I sound cold, that's not what it is. I don't let my emotions get in the way of facts. This has been our fight. No war is clean. No war is as easy or exact and precise as we would imagine. Wars are different. This is not Iraq war. This is not Afghanistan. This is not even Venezuela. So we need to stay in prayer and be patient while holding those who might be misstepping accountable. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Very well said, though. Fantastic. Where can people go to buy your book, Annie?
So if you like to grab a copy that is signed by myself, you can grab that on my website, liveuptofreedom.com. Otherwise, the paperback and Kindle are available on Amazon.
Annie Cyrus, thank you so much for joining me today on Patriot Radio. Love to have you back on again. Really great perspective, and you're very eloquent, and it's really good to have a first-person analysis of these things. I think it brings the heart to these stories that Americans need to hear. God bless you, and keep up the fight.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Annie Cyrus, liveuptofreedom.com. The Architecture of Jihad. And take a look at this. Very simple, too, as well. Here are the classic jihads. Here are the modern jihads. And America is right in the middle of it. We are right in the middle of a jihad being waged against us, not just from immigration, not just from deception, but at least 8 other aspects of warfare that most of us have completely ignored. Pick up a copy of that, share with your friends and family. Get the veil off of people's eyes. Jihad, Islam is incompatible with Western civilization. Sharia is incompatible with Western civilization. It's antithetical to our Constitution and our way of life. If you love freedom, you have to understand where the enemy's coming from. Don't dwell on them, but you have to understand where they're coming from.